This is the Patreon Party People podcast for September 2016. It's a little bit belated going up here on my YouTube channel, but if you'd like to listen to the latest episodes of Patreon Party People the moment they get released, just visit www.patreon.com/blazehedgehog. Hello and welcome to the Patreon Party People podcast for September 2016. It is currently September 7th, and that's a little late in the week for this podcast to normally start. But I kind of got hung up on something a little bit. This is part of the reason how I procrastinate so easily. And that's usually I'll say, okay, before I do this, I have to do this. And then the thing that I have to do before the other thing, I end up putting off and off and off and off. So both things end up getting really backed up. And in this case, I did not want to record this podcast until after I had done this new thing where I want to put the previous month's free podcast up on my YouTube channel. Just, it's like an easy video every month. And that's kind of like a cheap thing to say, but, sometimes you just need cheap videos to go up on your YouTube channel, whether they are, 51,000 views or 50 views. You just need to show that you're active, and this is content that shows I'm active, and it promotes the Patreon stream thingy, the feed, or whatever you want to call it. And it's all around a good thing. So I wanted to, make a video out of last month's podcast and put that up on my YouTube channel, and I didn't, because I don't know why I didn't. It was this thing where it would be I wouldn't think about it until right before I'd go to bed. And I think, no, that's going to take a while to render and upload and all this other stuff. I'll just save it for tomorrow. And then, that ended up being 3 or 4 days later when, I'm sitting here thinking, I should record a podcast tonight, but I wanted to do that other thing first, but I haven't done it. And, let's just play this video game instead. And I really can't be doing that. That's not very professional. Speaking of not very professional, I've also had a couple people asking me to be my podcast co-host. And as you'll notice, I'm doing this alone because once again, it is about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning currently. It's 4:37 a.m. right now. And I had my cousin ask me a week after last month's episode went up. He said, "Hey, I want to be on your podcast." And I said, we'll see. Because, I do genuinely think that I want other people on this podcast, kind of. It feels weird just being me, talking about me exclusively. It helps to have someone I said this last month, it helps to have someone bounce ideas off of and, have responses, so it's not just me droning on and on and on into a microphone. And then just 4 days ago, a friend of mine said, "Hey, I want to be your co-host on your podcast." And I had to tell him, I don't know, because generally when I record this podcast, it is in the middle of the night like this. Or I guess if you want to be anal retentive, it is the early morning. I generally record this from anywhere from, 10 p.m. to midnight to 4 a.m. like it is now. And that's for a couple reasons. Namely, it's quieter in the middle of the night. I live next door to a very large, very noisy, kind of mean dog, who basically barks from about 6 o'clock in the morning to about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. He barks when kids go to school in the morning. He barks when his masters are outside doing yard work. He barks at the mailman. He barks when the kids are coming home from school. He barks at everything. And it's just something that, you get used to and you learn to tune out as a person. But if it came through here on the podcast, that's not a very good, professional thing. So I tend to record super late at night so I don't have to worry about hearing him bark on the recording. And trust me, that's better for you guys. But that also creates a scenario where nobody else is awake right now but me, and that's because I'm a night owl. If my cousin was a night owl, that'd be fine. I'd say, let's record right now. And he'd be like, okay, but he has a real job, a legitimate job, working in tech support for a confectionery company or whatever you want to call it. So, for the time being, it's going to be just me. Also, I record so late at night because it's been the summer. I mean, Colorado lives in the part of the United States where it gets like really cold in the winter. It gets sometimes to below zero in the winter with, feet and feet and feet of snow. And then in the summer, we borderline a desert. So it gets to be 90, 100, 105 degrees in the summer. We've been kind of lucky this summer that it's been like, a high of 97 is I think the highest we ever got, maybe a high of 99. But that's still not especially cool outside. So generally speaking, if I'm back here in this back room, this office by my computer all day, I have a fan running like all day, every day. If I don't have a fan running on me, I melt into a puddle and I die like instantly. So I need a fan on to stay cool, and having a fan on in the background during a podcast is probably the worst thing you could do. And just to demonstrate what this sounds like, I actually have my fan here next to me. I'm going to turn it on. If I can find the button. Now this isn't really showing up too well on Audacity for me, but I'm sure that once I run this through, Levelator, it's going to be pretty apparent that something just changed in this room, and that's because there is now a fan buzzing in the background. And later at night, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, it's not 80 or 90 degrees. It is 60 degrees. It is, maybe low 70s. I think it is currently 66 degrees outside right now, and that's not too bad. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. So, it's just, I have to record in the middle of the night. It's more convenient for me. It provides a better quality podcast for you guys. And as much as I would like, I'm just so used to the fan droning all day that I was ready to just tune it out there. But as far as you guys are concerned, it would be better to have a co-host, but that's the long and short of it as it stands right now, is that, it's a small podcast. It's not a big production. And that's another reason why I'm also a little shy about a co-host, is because this is a Patreon show. It is my Patreon. If I have a co-host on here, it starts to be a little weird, because it's supposed to be a podcast about me, technically, as narcissistic as that is. I'm supposed to be talking about my YouTube channel, about the games I'm making, about, all the stuff happening in my life. And if I had someone else on here, it's not that they would steal the spotlight from me. It's just, it's weird to think that I would have a podcast about me with a co-host, right? Am I weird in thinking about that like that? Maybe I am. I don't know. But, I always mix in news stories and stuff like that. And also it gets into this, thing where part of me would want to pay them for being on the podcast, because that would technically be a job or whatever. Because again, this podcast is about me. I do this podcast as a source of income. It provides value for my Patreon account. Or at least I hope it provides value for my Patreon account. So again, if they're going to be on my podcast, it feels like they need to be a paid employee. And I don't know, it's a whole weird thing having a co-host that I will eventually need to sort out if things keep growing as they do. And we did get a brand new Patreon supporter this month. Maybe we'll get to that later. I don't know. It feels weird calling out an individual person like that, so maybe we won't. But anyway, what else has been going on the YouTubes here, or in my professional career? Last month we hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers, and that's pretty cool. Here, let me check my YouTube thing right now. I am currently sitting at 10,237 subscribers, and that's pretty nice. I was hoping that, like, YouTube would send me something about this. I know that if you hit 1 million subscribers, they send you this, it's like a silver placard. It's like a YouTube play button. And that's if you hit 1 million subscribers. I think if you hit 10 million subscribers, you get a gold placard. And I was thinking, 10,000 subscribers, maybe they'll send me a letter, maybe they'll send me an email. Neither of those things happened, unfortunately. So, I'm a little bit higher up there on the YouTube ladder, but I'm not that high on there. But 10,000 subscribers does kind of put me into this position where it starts to feel real, I guess, is a way to put it. I'm not just this nobody toiling in obscurity where it's like, you see these YouTube channels out there from, I don't know, like, what was it? It's the Numa guy. He started a YouTube channel, like a separate YouTube channel, like a company that eventually just started doing Let's Plays, like video Let's Plays of video games. And it is the saddest thing because they have like 30,000 YouTube subscribers, and their Let's Play videos get like 64 views. Here, let's see if I can find it. Numa. I used to be able to find this guy's channel. I was looking at it. Here we are. I think SMP Films. Is this him? No, that's just some... I don't know who that is. Anyway, it's just... That is like one of the most depressing things for me is that, you see this channel, there's so many people out there just doing Let's Plays into the void, doing like YouTube content into the void. They're trying so hard to make something of themselves. And I'm not blaming them for trying, but, some people will toil in obscurity for 5 years and not get any recognition for it. And, I'm slowly gaining recognition, and that's pretty good. And, that's kind of the way it is sometimes. Sometimes you just have to grind it out, I guess. And, eventually, you'll get your 15 minutes of fame or whatever. There's a quote I really like from the first Max Payne game. I think it's about fame, where Max stops and he says, "It was all chaos and luck, and anyone who thought otherwise was a fool." Maybe that's like a famous literary quote or something. You never know with these kind of things, but that speaks to what it is to be famous on the internet, is that, you don't really have to have talent or skill, or even if you do have talent or skill, that's not necessarily a guarantee of success. It's all just chaos and luck. And sometimes you hit and sometimes you miss, and you don't have any control over whether you hit or miss. The audience out there is what decides, and you can't predict the audience. It's what is it? Like Caesar, right? The thumb thing where he'd thumbs up or thumbs down. Was that even Caesar or was that someone else? This would be a good time where I would need a co-host to tell me if I'm right or wrong on that. But I could have sworn it was a thing where the audience would cheer or boo someone based on Caesar's thumb. And whether or not the audience would cheer or boo would determine whether or not they were thrown to the lions. And, sometimes the audience will boo you even if you do a good job. So, gosh, I don't even know where I'm going with this anymore. I'm getting into like all these metaphors and references, and, I'm just like a shark. I have to keep making metaphors. But yeah, 10,000 subscribers. I'm officially up there, and it only took me 10 and a half years to get there. Though if we're being honest, probably more than half of that 10,000 subscriber base came within like the last 3 or 4 years. So, I'm accelerating, I guess. Maybe at some point in the future, I will hit like 100,000 subscribers, or even maybe 1 million subscribers. But I'm not holding my breath. I hit 10,000, and that's actually pretty satisfactory to me. We'll see what happens, though, I guess. I don't know. Speaking of YouTube videos, I put out 3 of them last month. Who am I? What kind of person am I? I put out here, I've been clicking around my YouTube so much that I actually lost the page I was on because I was going to talk about these videos. Obviously, I put out the How Do We Fix Sonic video. That was at the end of July last month. It is currently sitting at 51,259 views, which officially makes it probably the most popular YouTube video I've had in the last 5 years. I think the 2 most popular videos to compare to were the Rhodia the Sky Soldier video, which is probably up to we'll say 15 to 20,000 views, and that was a little over a year. And then past that was my Sonic Boom video review for Rise of Lyric. And that's been out for almost 3 years now, I think. And that's up to 65,000 views, and it took 3 years to get there. So the fact that this How Do We Fix Sonic video got to 51,000 views in a little over a month and a half makes it a pretty big deal. And I'm pretty pleased with that. After that, another Metroid 2 remake came out and was immediately issued cease and desist orders. And now, it just recently came out that, Doc M64, the creator of AM2R, recently got a cease and desist notice through his email account. He was distributing a patch for another Metroid 2 remake through his email account, and Nintendo sent his email account a cease and desist that said he can't do that anymore. So he is, ceasing all development on AM2R entirely. But that all happened, so I decided to produce a video on that about, my experiences in the fan gaming community at large, my observations on fair use law, and, things like that. Rules and regulations you should probably respect. Past examples, like with Fox and Paramount and everything else. And I thought I did a pretty good job on that video. It was one of those things where inspiration just strikes like a lightning bolt, and, you're off to the races, just working away through the power of inspiration alone. And I churned that video out in 2 days, and that's pretty impressive. And then, I did a third video called Overclocking Super FX Chip Games in an Emulator. How? And that's about 6,500 views. One night on Twitter, I was posting all these videos of an Super FX chip overclocking option I found in an emulator, and it was getting, tons and tons of retweets and questions and everything else. So I did a video on that. And I don't know if I really like that overclocking Super FX chips video I did. I tried to be a little more off the cuff about it. I did it more like a Let's Play, where I turned on OBS and started recording for forever. It felt like talking about, the history of emulation and what overclocking is and how Super FX chips work. And you can tell it's a little less professional. I ended up having to go through and chop out all this stuff, and it was kind of a mess to edit together, and I don't think I'll be doing anything like that anytime soon. So consider if you think the production value on that video is weirdly low or sloppy or anything, just know that's not what I'm going to be doing going forward. It really does help to write a script first. Like I said last month with everything about the shot list and everything, it's kind of the more planning you do, the better. Just diving into a video and thinking, I'll figure this out as I record. No, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. Plan everything out first. There was going to be more videos last month. I know that in August's podcast, I mentioned a new Let's Narcissism episode that I did not end up doing. And then there was something else after that. Oh, the response video to my How Do We Fix Sonic video. Because, there were lots of unintentional misconceptions in that video about things that I was talking about and people getting it wrong that I wanted to address in a second video that I didn't end up doing yet. After putting out 3 videos last month, I just kind of ran out of steam a little bit. I'm not used to putting out so many videos in a month like that. So, I just said, okay, 3 videos this month is enough. I'm gonna sit down and I'm just gonna play some video games for a little while and just chill out for a bit. And, I shouldn't do that technically. I should have kept my momentum going and just, kept going. But it was also getting close to the end of the month. And if you've listened to past months, you know that at the end of every month, I tend to go to work for a thrift store for about a week. And, usually working 5 hours a day at a thrift store, I come home and I don't feel like doing anything. Maybe that makes me a bad person. I don't know. But 5 hours on your feet dealing with customers and stocking shelves and cleaning up messes. I come home and I kind of sink into my chair for 3 hours and then I go to bed. It feels weird to say that because I don't feel like compared to some other jobs, the thrift store gig isn't probably that difficult, but it's difficult for me. And I think people who say, oh, you're just being a wimp and whatever, it's not that hard of a job. Yeah, it's probably a lot harder than you think it is. It's a tiny thrift store. People are rude. I actually wrote a big rant on my blog, probably a week ago at this point, about how rude and how messy and everything else that people at a thrift store can be. And I'm not going to recount it too much here, but it can be a nightmare some days. So I don't feel too bad for coming home from work and just being like, nope, I have no creativity to spend. Deal with it. We're getting that Star Fox Super FX overclocking video was August 17th, and I think I went into work August 23rd. So, I probably could have squeezed another video out in there somewhere, but I decided not to. And, it's my YouTube channel, and that's the way it is. And also, I mentioned this last month, but school, I think, is looming for me. People want me to go back to school. They want me to go to college for computer graphics and animation and all this stuff. And I think, if registration isn't already closed, it will be closing soon. So, I should probably get on that if I'm serious about it. And, I'm at this crossroads where I need to decide, am I going back to school? Am I going to just, keep doing what I'm doing with YouTube and indie games? There's a lot of options on my plate right now, and trying to decide which one to do is probably most of the battle right now. So, and you get crippled with indecision, right? So, I don't know. I'm just going to stand here and be indecisive for the next 15 years. And another thing I was tweeting about, just this past few weeks, something came into my head. Another, a friend of mine, maybe you know him. He goes by the name of Drac on the internet. He posted footage of this. He's been doing this YouTube series called Artifact Museum or Artifacts Museum. He spells it kind of weird. And he's looking at old fan games, old indie games. There was this Kirby RPG or something where he was in a Metroid environment. I don't remember. I watched part of it. Well, I watched all of it, but it was a Tamagotchi RPG. That's what it was. And then it was Kirby Visits Brinstar, something like that. But it's all these old fan games that he's not doing commentary on them. It's just raw footage of these games that would be lost to time otherwise. Games made by children, the kinds of thing I was making when I was 15, right? The kinds of things we were probably all making when we were 15. Anyway, Artifacts Museum, he found, I say he found, what ended up happening is I found that there was a Windows 95 version of Bubsy called Super Bubsy, and I told him about it and neither of us could get it to run. It was this weird thing where, old PC games, sometimes they just don't run anymore. because Windows changes and evolves over time. So what we needed was like a Windows 95 machine to run Super Bubsy. And neither of us had one at the time. And I guess he probably set up something you can do is that you can install Windows onto DOSBox. And DOSBox is this emulator that emulates old computer hardware. So he probably installed Windows 95 there and got Super Bubsy running through that. And he posted a video of Super Bubsy running on Windows 95. And it was this weird thing like, okay, so I should explain what Super Bubsy actually is. Not only is it a Windows 95 port of the first Bubsy game, it kind of like, you know, the HD remix, fad that's been going on for a little while. Well, all the way back in 1997, Super Bubsy is an HD remix of Bubsy on like the Super Nintendo. And you think, wow, 1997, surely it couldn't be that HD, right? No, actually it kind of is. It's really high resolution. It's more high resolution than like a PlayStation game. Like if you think of Castlevania Symphony of the Night or, Mega Man 8 or whatever, the sprites in Super Bubsy are actually higher resolution than that. It runs at like, I don't even know, it's more than 640 by 480, I know that much. But, you know, it remakes all the sprites, it redraws them at higher resolution, and it got me thinking about, you know, what if somebody remade Bubsy to where, you know, it was actually a good game instead of Bubsy. So, I took the Sonic Worlds Delta engine, which if you know, I've been involved with the development of that for a while, or like a little while. I've been involved here and there in bits and pieces. I've used it for things. So, you know, I know my way around this code, and I started importing Bubsy sprites into it. And I thought, this is stupid and weird, and I kind of like how stupid and weird it is, so let's keep going with this. And I kept adding more, and I started changing game mechanics, and I posted a video up on Twitter, a couple of videos, and people were like, wow, this looks incredible. This is the Bubsy game I've always dreamed of. And it, you know, it starts this snowball effect where it's like, you know, I can keep going with this. I can do all kinds of weird stuff. And then I realized, oh, wait. I'm at this weird crossroads where I need to figure out where I'm going next. I probably can't work on this Bubsy game right now because Halloween's coming up. I have a Halloween game I wanted to make. I have Halloween videos I want to put out, more of those later. You know, there's probably no room in my life for this Bubsy game right now. And it's a shame because it was getting to a place where, you know, I was thinking all these crazy thoughts like, you know, we could redraw all the sprites so they look better because the sprites in Bubsy are kind of weird. We can introduce more Sonic game mechanics like shields and whatever else and do all these better levels and all this better level graphics. And, you know, I don't think I have the time to do something like that when I could be spending my time, in more productive endeavors, I guess. And I really hate admitting things like that to myself because I do genuinely love making fan games. That is, you know, I just got a Tumblr ask like yesterday about fan games. Like, are you ever going to make another Sonic fan game? And it's like, boy, do I want to. I want to make a Sonic fan game using chaotic sprites, but, you know, make that a good game. I want to make my own Sonic fan game. You know, I started Sonic Forever Now. Back when Sonic 4 Episode 1 came out, I started that, and I thought, you know, I want to make a Sonic game. I want to make a classic Sonic game. And if I could, I would. I would love nothing more than to just push everything else in my life to the side and focus on making like a Sonic fan game. You know, just as best as I can make it and release it. But I have so much that I could be doing that is better for me in the long run. And just things like that kill me. They kill me because I don't want to. I don't want to be a responsible adult. I want to goof off for the rest of my life. But then again, don't we all? But yeah, I mentioned just now Halloween videos coming up. I don't have any plans for Halloween this year. You know me, I usually have like blog posts on my Tumblr blog about Halloween stuff. I was releasing those modern day campfire story things where I'd clip segments out of like Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell and Mysterious Universe and all this stuff. And then last year, I stopped listening to Mysterious Universe because they turned out to be like huge jerks that were getting really desperate, I guess, for subscribers, for paid subscribers. And they actually started complaining about it on air, being like, oh, the reason why we don't do cool stuff anymore is because you don't subscribe to us. And it's like, okay, well, if you're admitting that you're not going to be doing cool stuff anymore, then I don't need to subscribe. You know, screw you guys. I'm out. And I did. I dropped them and I haven't listened to them and I never will listen to them ever again. And, you know, it was this build up with Mysterious Universe too, where, you know, I say they admit that they're not going to do cool stuff anymore. And that's also because, you know, they got into this thing on their YouTube channel where they would do like these side videos where I guess it was segments they cut out of their podcast that was just like, you know, oh, fat people are the worst. Oh, what are you guys doing? You guys are a weird podcast about ghost stories and Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. What are you doing being weird internet trolls about nothing? And then, you know, it gets to the point where they're like, oh, non-subscribers are the reason why we don't do ghost stories anymore. It's like, you know, big middle finger to you guys. I'm not promoting your show anymore. And so, you know, that kind of scatters all my Halloween plans. The usual Halloween stuff I've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years. It's all scattered to the wind now. And I don't have anything ready for Halloween. So last month I mentioned, I think it was last month, a YouTube series I wanted to do about scary games where it's kind of a let's play, but it's also more like game design analysis as I play to find out, you know, what makes a scary game scary. And that's partially for my benefit so that, you know, I can explore that and also take people along for the ride with me. And if I'm going to do that, I need to do that soon. I need to start, you know, I've already built a list of games I'd like to look at. If I am going to go through with this, it's probably going to be 5 episodes, one every Monday or what is it? I think it starts October 1st. So yeah, it would be Saturday, October 1st, the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. And I've built a list of 5 games for each of those 5 days. And, you know, the general idea, I just said, you know, you have to work on a script, but the general idea would be that I would just turn OBS on, I'd turn my microphone on, and play a game for like an hour or 2 and see what happens. And then, you know, edit that down to maybe 5 or 10 or 15 minutes of the really analytical stuff. And I guess I'll give you a sneak preview of the games I'm planning. Week 1 would be Clive Barker's Undying. And I know I did a video on Undying last year and it was kind of a funny video. And I think that's probably a good idea to, you know, get things started because I feel like I have a lot of things to say about Clive Barker's Undying. Week 2 would be Silent Hill 2. Week 3 would be Curse. What is Curse, actually? I don't remember Curse. I feel like Curse. What is Curse? I don't own a game named Curse. I think I was thinking of something else when I wrote down Curse. What is Curse? What is Curse? Boy, that's weird. I'm going to have to find something else to fit in there because, oh no, that's right. I remember now. Curse is that weird indie game where it's like, it's really abstract. Like you'll find out. It's last year when I was scouting games for this thing, this pseudo Let's Play series, the one that made me want to do it was Curse. I remember what this game is now and it's awesome. Well, I'm going to shut up. You'll see what it is when I get there. And then week 4 would be Amnesia, and then we end on Slender, the 8 pages. They're not really like new games. You know, I was thinking maybe doing like more indie games than, you know, it's like stuff nobody's ever heard of, but I think going for the big hitters, the heavy hitters, is probably a better idea in general for this, if it's going to be like analytical, because people don't want to know, well, I guess maybe they do about smaller indie games, but you gotta hit the big ones to get the page views, I guess. I don't know. What am I talking about? And Silent Hill 2, I should say, is probably a little tentative. I don't own Silent Hill 2, so I'll be trying to emulate it on an emulator. And, that can be a little bit spotty. I might have to sub something in on week 2. So I guess what I should actually be saying is that this entire list is kind of tentative if I end up running into like recording problems or whatever. But yeah, maybe that'll be happening in October. Maybe it won't. I suppose we'll find out, won't we? And speaking of Halloween, let's roll into the general nonsense that I usually cap this podcast off with at the end. And there is a fantastic news story going around. Let me bring it up here real quick if I can find it. This is from, oh gosh, it doesn't actually say. It's a local news site. Where is this local news site? It's like Greenville, Wisconsin, I think? It's weird that their website doesn't actually say what region they're from. It says, I guess it's Carolina, because it says home of the Carolina Panthers. But it doesn't really matter. It's out in the, almost said the Middle East. I guess that's technically, because, you have the Midwest, you'd have the Mid-East, right? You'd think? I don't know. It says right here in the headline, I'm an idiot. Greenville, South Carolina. Clowns in the woods try to lure children with money, residents say. And I kind of, part of me loves this story because as sinister as it sounds, it doesn't sound like anyone's really being hurt. It's just creepy. And the thought of people doing this, here, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll read part of the article here. Residents of a Greenville County apartment complex say clowns have tried to lure their children into the woods with large amounts of money, and deputies have released the report Monday in connection to the claims. This is about people dressing up in creepy clown costumes, roaming around in the woods in South Carolina, and generally just creeping people out and being scary, but not actually doing anything wrong. Here, let's scroll through this article a little bit more. The police report from August 21st says a deputy went to Fleetwood Manor to conduct a follow-up investigation of reports from 2 callers on August 20th who said a suspicious person dressed in circus clown clothing and white face paint trying to entice children to follow him into the woods. I don't feel like I read that properly. Pinicario said no police reports were filed on August 20th because callers were uncooperative and would not leave their names. So right there, you have reports of creepy clowns in the woods, but the people reporting them won't give their names. So, you're thinking, okay, that's the people in the clown costumes calling themselves in to creep people out so that there's a police report that gets released that says creepy clowns or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's more from the article. A woman told the deputy that her son told her that he saw several clowns in the woods, whispering and making strange noises. She said that she went with her son to the area where he said he had seen the clowns, and her son told her that he saw several clowns in the woods who were flashing green laser lights before they ran away. The woman's older son told the deputy that he heard chains and bangings on the front door of their home on the night of August 20th. Donna Arnold says her son told her about seeing clowns. She says he is scared. And now this is a quote from presumably Donna Arnold herself. At first, I thought he was telling a fib, and I said, go in the house and we'll talk about this again, because I didn't want it all over the place, Arnold said. Then the next day, there were 30 kids that came up to me and said, Miss Donna, there's clowns in the woods. My child was with me, so I knew they had to be seeing something. There was more than one kid that had seen them, so I feel confident that he was telling the truth. Another resident told the deputy that when she was walking to her home on August 21st at about 2:30 in the morning, she saw a large clown with a blinking nose standing under a lamppost near a dumpster. She said the clown waved at her but did not approach or speak to her. The deputy walked the trail to the house. Wait, I think I skipped something. Yeah, okay. The deputy said other children told him that they saw several clowns in the woods and tried to entice them by showing them large amounts of money. The children said that they think the clowns live in a house near the pond at the end of a trail in the woods. The deputy walked the trail to a house near a pond in the woods behind the apartment complex. The deputy said there were no signs of suspicious activity and he found no one dressed as a clown. So, you have creepy clowns, nobody knows where they came from, they're out in the woods making noise, rattling chains, banging on doors, shining laser lights everywhere. Be like, come here, kids, I'll give you some money if you just come into the woods with me. Like, obviously this is someone just messing with people, and that's kind of amazing. And then just a couple days ago, maybe not even a couple days ago, I think it was just yesterday, I saw like a news report headline on a local news TV channel that says the clown epidemic is now spreading to multiple states. So this is becoming a thing that people are doing. And like, it's terrible on a level because these people are obviously scared. We don't actually know the motives of these people. It's just creepy clowns in the woods making creepy sounds and doing creepy things. But what a perfect lead in for Halloween, right? Oh, and this is the part that I like. I'm going back to that news story. Let's see. The deputy said he investigated a report of gunfire the night before and learned that men from the apartment complex who were aware of the complaints about clowns fired weapons into the direction of the wooded area after they heard strange noises. So, I don't know, man. Like, it's gonna be terrible if this turns out to be like a legitimate psychopath who then abducts a real child and this turns out to be, something actually serious. But as long as it's just people creeping other people out, I like that. That's kind of cool to me. Just because it's close to Halloween and, that's the kind of thing that you like to hear to get you in the mood for Halloween. And boy, what a good thing to get you in the mood for Halloween. Am I right? Oh, feels like more and more of my friends are complaining about Halloween creep all of a sudden. It's like, no. They start putting Christmas decorations out at the same time they put Halloween decorations out. And so, I guess it's more like a race, really. And, Halloween decorations go up and then Christmas decorations go up. So I feel like Halloween is trying to go up earlier to give Christmas more room to go up earlier. So the fact that there was like back to school supplies in August with Halloween stuff next to it, it's like, yeah, thumbs up. Give me more Halloween. I want Halloween to be the end of August, all through September, all through October. These people who only celebrate Halloween the last week of October, like, you're nuts. I'm fully in Halloween all the time. Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. Especially lately, because I've talked about the Halloween adventure game I started last year up at my cousin's place. To keep myself in the mood and give myself inspiration for things to do for this Halloween adventure game, I subscribe to some blogs on Tumblr that just post year-round Halloween content. And you know what? I'm pretty alright with that. I'm kind of almost always in the mood for Halloween now. So, bring it on. Bring on the creepy clowns as long as they don't actually try and kill me or kill anyone else for that matter. But with that, weird, bizarre thing out of the way, we'll wrap this podcast up with the usual, what games have I been playing? And it's not much. I've basically been chilling out, watching YouTube as usual. I'm doing some light retro gaming. That was, I guess technically last month I published 4 videos because one of them was a stream archive where I played a bunch of random retro games like Aladdin on the Super Nintendo and Mega Man X and everything else. You can go watch that on my YouTube channel if you want. But since then, I guess I've been dabbling more in emulators again. I played probably like an hour or two of another Metroid 2 remake. I know that's not an emulator, but it's kind of the retro game thing. Another Metroid 2 remake is actually really good. I mean, that much should be obvious given that, we've had demos and videos and things like that for years and years. So, you knew it was going to be good going into the end final product, but the end final product is actually, it's good. it feels like an official Metroid game. It feels like Nintendo made it. The music is fantastic. The new sprites are fantastic. Something I like about it is kind of like the structure of the game. You think about Super Metroid, and it's kind of like this open exploration thing where you kind of can go wherever you can, depending on your abilities. What Metroid 2 does is it kind of linearizes Metroid a little bit, but not like entirely. So if you've never played Metroid 2 before, the whole idea is that Samus Aran lands on like the Metroid homeworld, SR388. And this is where Metroids thrive and breed and mutate into these giant, like, evil creatures. And she's here to exterminate them, to basically go through the entire planet and blow up all of them, every Metroid she can find. She just wants to kill them all. And the way the game handles this is, like a Super Metroid, it's broken into individual discrete areas. You have your Bryn Star, etc., etc., etc. But what Metroid 2 does is it will lock you in an area. Like, let's say, in the context of Super Metroid, you'd get to Norfair. Well, Norfair would be this self-contained area that was free roaming. You could go anywhere within Norfair that you had the ability to do, but you could never progress past Norfair. And, backtracking to previous areas would be kind of pointless. In a way, it's almost like Norfair is a level in an action game, except that it's, it's non-linear. It's something that you're meant to explore and map out, and there will be items and upgrades and Metroid stuff in there, but it's this tiny self-contained area. And then once you kill all the Metroids and clear everything out in that area, the next area opens up, and then you move to that. And then again, the whole loop starts all over again, where you need to explore and map out this space and kill all the Metroids in there and find all the upgrades and then move on to the next area. And that's the structure of how Metroid 2 works. And it works really, really well. Another Metroid 2 remake is fantastic. If you can find a download link, that it's only available on torrents right now. But if you can torrent things, then by all means, go out there and find another Metroid 2 remake. It's out there. There's a whole Reddit for it, and I just bumped my microphone. Hopefully that didn't come up. But there's a whole Reddit for another Metroid 2 remake. Nintendo seems to only be taking down download links and places that are hosting the downloads. So it's not banning discussion of the fan game as of yet. So as long as there are places that discuss another Metroid 2 remake, there will be links to torrents where you can download it. Because Nintendo can't stop torrents. They can cease and desist people downloading the game, but as far as torrents itself goes, that's decentralized hosting, and they can never technically shut it down. So go look for torrents if you want to download it, and I highly recommend that you do. Besides another Metroid 2 remake, something on a whim I decided to try was the PlayStation 2 game Castlevania Curse of Darkness. If you know the history of Castlevania in 3D, you'll know that the 3D Castlevania games aren't very well regarded. Castlevania 64 is kind of legendarily not a very good game, and I can tell you now definitively that Castlevania Curse of Darkness is also not a very good game. In retrospect, it's one of those games where I don't really know how it got made. How do you make a game like Castlevania Curse of Darkness and not realize what is wrong with it? Because it feels so plainly obvious now, like a decade after the game came out. Curse of Darkness tries to bring the Symphony of the Night Metroidvania structure into 3D. And that in itself is not a bad idea. But how it handles it is like a really bad idea. You have this gigantic castle because, you need a gigantic castle. It's Castlevania. Being in the castle is kind of the whole point of the game. But just the way it's laid out is so terrible. It doesn't matter if you're in caves. It doesn't matter if you're in the ramparts. It doesn't matter if you're in, Castlevania always has like aristocrat, like hotel kind of areas with like fancy bedrooms and everything. It doesn't matter where you are in this game. It's all these empty, square, boxy environments. Like I said, even the caves, nothing about this Castlevania game feels organic. It's all boxes, it's all squares, it's all rectangles. And the rooms are so big and so empty and so featureless that it's like, why did you think anyone would enjoy this? It's like they built this entire game out of cubes and then just detailed the cubes a little bit. And like the hallways are just so long. Your character, I don't know what his name is. It's like Hector Balmont or something. He moves so slowly and the hallways just stretch on forever. You'll have this hallway that will take you 2 or 3 minutes to get to the other end of. And, you fight maybe 2 or 3 monsters on your way through it. And that is the most boring thing in the world. When you first start this game, you start standing at the base of Castlevania. You have to walk inside the gates. But what you can do is you can turn around and you can go the other direction. Because there's a secret behind you in the forest. And you travel through this little forest path that must wind around itself for like 5 or 6 minutes. And there's nothing you do. Like there's a couple candles you can break that will give you like, a single gold coin that's worth $1. And you go through this big winding forest path for 2 or 3 minutes, and you get to a dead end with a single potion that heals like 50 hit points. And now you have to go all the way back to Castlevania for another 3 to 5 minutes, doing nothing. And that's the kind of game this is, where you spend so long doing nothing, walking and walking and walking forever. And it is the worst thing I can imagine, I think. Like, well, I need to stop being hyperbolic like that, but it's bad. It's not great. So, Castlevania Curse of Darkness, avoid it if you can. And like the combat systems aren't great. Like they're okay. You kind of get the feeling that whoever was designing the combat system for Curse of Darkness really liked Devil May Cry. And that's not a bad inspiration to take, really. But I don't know, there's not enough of it. The spaces are too big and empty. Like, the thing about Devil May Cry is that you have this combat system that's so, like, combo focused, right? You have air launchers, you have dashes, you have dodge rolls and stingers and whatever else, right? Curse of Darkness doesn't really have much of that. Like, you have 2 buttons. You have a regular attack button and you have a finisher attack button. And what basically this means is that you mash the attack button, and depending on which point in your mashing cycle that you push the finisher, you'll do a different finisher. And that's okay, but it's not great. And like a lot of your abilities, like your double jump and your dodge roll and all this other stuff, those are the upgrades. Those are like the Metroid upgrades that you find. And that doesn't feel good either. It's something I really don't like about Devil May Cry even, is that, so many of your combat moves are locked off until the end of the game. And that's something that Bayonetta really got right, was giving you a lot of stuff to work with your combo system. And Curse of Darkness is it's the worst example of that, where it's just, you're nothing, you're nobody, you're so weak until you start exploring the castle. And it's like, even Alucard in Symphony of the Night had more going on originally than this Hector Belmont guy does. It's just, bad game, not good. Probably not going to go back to it, though the music's really good. But that's Castlevania, right? It's good music. After Castlevania Curse of Darkness, I got it into my head. The Battlefield 1 open beta just started like a week ago. I thought, okay, I have this nice shiny new computer. Let's see how Battlefield 1 runs. And the answer is that Battlefield 1 doesn't run at all. Turns out my graphics card is just a little too old to run Battlefield 1. It tells me to update my drivers, and I'm running on the most recent drivers for my graphics card. So it won't even boot up. But, that got me to install Origin, and I thought, well, I have all these other games on Origin that I've never played. So I reinstalled Crysis. I started Crysis like 3 or 4 years ago. Didn't get very far in it, so I wanted to see how it ran on the new system, and I ended up installing a bunch of other stuff like Need for Speed Most Wanted and Spore. That ended up being the games that I played for this last week and a half. Crysis is pretty good, I would say. It gets, with the original Far Cry by Crytek, there came this moment about halfway through the game where they introduced mutants. And everyone says, Far Cry is this amazing game until you get to the point with the mutants. And I would agree, because I played through 3/4 of the original Far Cry, 5 or 6 years ago. And the mutants are they're annoying one-hit kill enemies. They soak up a lot of bullets for no reason. They just aren't fun to fight. And you end up having to fight a lot of them in the last half of Far Cry. Crysis is the same way. Crytek loves their amazing jungle technology. It's the jungles in Crysis are kind of unparalleled even today. This is a 9-year-old game, and it still looks like games coming out in 2016. That's how good Crysis looks. They love their artificial intelligence. You have these Korean soldiers that you're fighting that are incredibly intelligent. They handle these giant environments beautifully. They can hear you, they can see you like real people do, and they investigate things, and you can play with them, and it is so fun to fight these Marines, these Korean Marines, or whatever they call them, the Korean Army, the KPA, as they were referred to in Crysis. About halfway through Crysis, well, probably not even halfway through, it's more like 3/4 of the way through, you start fighting aliens. And just like the mutants in Far Cry, fighting the aliens in Crysis isn't very fun. The low gravity part where you go inside the alien mothership, that's cool. But then once you get back out into the real world and you have to fight aliens in like this big metal armor and all this, the game just kind of falls apart. The real fun of Crysis to me is how big the maps are, playing with screwing around with the Korean Army. And you get to the end of that game and it turns to junk because enemies aren't fun to fight. They start funneling you down narrower and narrower corridors. You can't really explore anymore. There's no more secondary objectives where you're, because something that Crysis does that I really like, I said before, the open maps, right? Where it'll be like a single map in Crysis is probably as big as the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, all of it. It's like a 10-mile by 10-mile thing or something ridiculous like that. And, you'll worm your way through this entire map over the course of like an hour. And there's only like 6 maps, but there's only 6 maps because they're huge. That stops happening as you get towards the end of the game. Something Crysis likes to do to make you explore these huge maps is you'll get like a secondary objective. It'll say, the Korean Army has these anti-air guns that you need to go plant charges on and blow up. And you don't have to blow up the anti-air charges. It'll just make later parts of the game a little bit harder. And, I ended up missing planting all the charges on that. And then you get to this second half of the game where the aliens come in. Sorry, I had a hiccup there. And it turns into a hallway. There's no more jungle to explore. It's just all, come on, we gotta go. We gotta get back to the aircraft carrier. We have to nuke the aliens. That'll solve the problem, because that's always worked in every single example of aliens in anything ever, is that we gotta nuke them. They won't be invincible to nukes. And surprise, the aliens end up invincible to nukes. Spoilers. If you've never seen Independence Day, or played Crysis, or, what is it? Did they do it in War of the Worlds? I think they did it in War of the Worlds. But yeah, the end of that game gets rough. Real rough. I tweeted about this a little bit. It kind of turns into Halo, where, once you get out of the alien mothership, you get kind of like an Assault on the Control Room vibe, if you remember that level from the first Halo game where, it's all snowy and you unleash the flood and then you come back down the mountain the way you came and it's all this snow and there's all these aliens, and that's kind of the feeling they're going for. But it just, yeah. Crisis, good for about 75% of the game, and then the last quarter just, it's gone. Spore, I played a little bit of Spore. It's Spore. If you don't know what that means, is that, there's a lot of potential there, and it fulfills almost none of it. It was doubly bad for me because I couldn't get Spore to connect to the internet. Half the fun of Spore is seeing the alien creations from other users, which it pulls down from the internet. And I guess the Spore servers have been up and down over the last few years. Like, there will be months at a time where the Spore servers just do not work anymore, and then all of a sudden they'll be turned back on again. And I guess the period in which I installed Spore was a period in which they are non-functional. So I had to go through the first 2 or 3 stages of Spore, just playing with the default aliens that come if you play the game offline. And that's not terrible, but it's not the kind of excitement you want from a game like Spore. And in general, there is not a lot of excitement in a game like Spore. It's nice creating your own aliens, but as far as actually interacting with that world, it's not especially fulfilling. It's a lot of playing Simon Says to talk to other aliens and getting owned by huge monsters that don't like you. And whew, there's a good game in there somewhere. And maybe someday, one day, someone will make one. But, clearly it wasn't with Spore, and it wasn't really with No Man's Sky either. So, and then finally, Need for Speed Most Wanted, the new one that came out a couple years ago. That's an okay game. I only played like maybe an hour of it, because I got it for free. The EA has that on the house program, right? Where like, here's a free game every month, because that's the only way we know you'll use Origin. And one month it was the new Need for Speed Most Wanted game. And that's an okay game, but something about that game just feels really artificial to me. And I think I talked about this on Twitter, but I think I pinpointed it. There's no people in that game. You have this big, super detailed, semi-realistic city, and you never see another human being. There's no pedestrians on those streets, like on the sidewalks. It's just a city full of cars and buildings and nothing else. And that feels super weird to me, like it's the post-apocalypse or something. And like something else that bothers me is how many cops are in that game. Like, I'm not super familiar with the city of Fairview, which is where this game takes place. But I don't think there's a police station in that city. Yet they have a police force that is like 45 cars strong. Like, you'll be speeding through a race and you'll end up with like 5, 10, 15 cops behind you. And then you'll blow through a roadblock that is like 5, 10, or 15 cop cars in front of you. And it's like, where are they getting all these police cars? Why do they have 30 police cars for this one city? And it's the weirdest thing. It's this total disconnect where it feels like here is the real world, but here is so many things about it that are totally like fake and unreal and weird. And I don't think I'm going to be going back to that game anytime soon, because it is so weird in so many aspects. I know a lot of people who are like, oh, it's Burnout Paradise 2. And yeah, it has a lot of the features of Burnout Paradise, but it is not Burnout Paradise 2. Not even a little bit. It is just a weird, haunting game, I guess is the right word I'm looking for. It's kind of this uncanny valley feeling that I just cannot shake when I was playing it. But yeah, I guess that's the end of the podcast for this month. We're a little over an hour. That's a little more than I like to usually go. I said this last month, but usually I was averaging about 45 minutes a podcast. So getting up to about an hour is a little weird, but whatever. These podcasts are as long as they need to be. Hopefully you enjoyed my aimless rambling for the last hour and 6 minutes. I shouldn't really call out like that because there's things I edit out of these podcasts that will usually make it like an hour and 4, hour and 2. Who knows? Maybe this will be down to 45 minutes by the time you guys hear it. But again, thank you for listening. Thank you for hearing me ramble. Maybe we'll get a co-host someday, but don't count on it anytime soon. But until then, I guess I'll see you guys next month. And who knows, maybe this podcast next month will be once again recorded at my cousin's place. I'd like to have the podcast out before then, because I don't like taking my microphone up to his place. The base that this microphone is attached to gets a little weird when I transport it. I had to fiddle with it to get everything right not too long ago because the pop filter wasn't placed correctly and everything was feeling a little bit loose. But hopefully next month we'll have a podcast in early October, and hopefully in October we'll have a video series where I play horror games for a little while. But until then, I'll see you guys next month.